Characters or mascots are often used as an important part of a brand, and they can also be incorporated into logos. It is not an easy task to create a character that can represent a company and capture all the important aspects of their business and services. Today, I'm going to analyze a mascot illustration contest and explain what makes the winning design stand out from the rest of the entries. This one is a really exciting contest, so I'm really looking forward to review it. There's so many cool entries and brilliant way to learn and improve your illustration skills. Whether you want to enter contests like this or just simply want to work with clients on a freelance basis, this is a great way of learning, analyzing and looking at other people's work. And the reason I like to look at contests is because they are easy to compare. They were done for the same brief and we can actually see the brief. So here we have the brief from the client. Now let me just highlight a few important things. So the name of the company is Best Heating and Cooling. Here we can see their colors. So these are the RGB and CMYK values. So that's the brand colors. So when you do your illustration, you need to make sure that you use these. And because it's a vector illustration, so that's obvious from the requirements. So we need to submit Illustrator file or EPS files. So that means that working with vectors, we will have a limited color palette. But apart from these primary colors, we can of course add some shading and highlights. That wasn't restricted in the brief. However, it is quite important that they would like to have a retro feel in their character. That's also stated again here. So more retro. That's quite important. And then we also have the additional instructions. It has to be a male caricature. It's a technician. And also they say they would like to have a Superman pose, which is quite interesting because the final winning design is not entirely or exactly a Superman pose. But that was in the brief. So you will see most of the entries were following that. And then we have some restrictions or instructions on the clothes and then the colors again. And that's pretty much it. So generally, this is all we have to know. And this here is the current character, or they're saying that they are attaching the current best character that they have. So that's a good reference point. And of course, they have their logo up here, but they would like this to be more retro and they want it to be original. So now let's see the actual designs. So moving on, first I wanted to show you some of the sketches from the illustrators who entered this competition. Some of these were then worked up into final designs and we will see also them later on. But it is worth mentioning that if you are submitting sketches to these contests, you should still tidy them up. So what I mean is here, for example, on the right side, we have very hard to read lines. So if you've done this on paper and it seems like drawing on paper, you should scan it into Photoshop and just increase the contrast. So you want the background to be completely white and your lines to be black. Like in this one, it has a very good contrast and it's much neater for a sketch. But what I don't like in this case is this gradient at the bottom. So if you just upload a sketch, I think the best thing to do is to keep it clear. So you don't need anything else. Again, here, I would make sure the yellow background is removed and it's completely just black and white. And similarly here, I would tidy up the sketch a bit. So the one on the left, A1, I think is a better take on how to present a sketch if you are planning to do that before actually submitting a full colored version. Now, the reason I'm including these numbers on the top is so you can refer to them in the comments. And I would love to see which entries you like, or you can just say, I loved C1 because, and so on and so forth. So there were 82 entries overall, out of which I'm going to go through 27. Some of them were declined or withdrawn by the designer, so I was not able to download them and include them here. But we still have a lot to go through. So on this page, I collected the ones that I found the weakest. They are still not bad illustrations, but they lack character and they lack the personality in most of them that I think the client was looking for. So let's see why. Let's try to explore why. First of all, we have one that is clearly a very good caricature. So the size of the head is almost exactly the same as the body, maybe even bigger. And that's great when you want to focus on the expression. But for this brief, I think it was just as important to get a good posture. And this posture is really flat and it doesn't really have personality in it. Plus also, I think this briefcase looks more like a suitcase that you would take for traveling. While for a technician, I think these type of briefcases are already better, or this one here. On B3, again, it's the posture that's a bit awkward and weird. And also here, the proportions are a bit off. So we have almost like a feminine body because of these very curvy details. And the shoulders, again, like everything is really curvy. So you have to be careful with that. The lines and the shape language has to describe that character. And because this is a guy, you want to use a bit more blocky shapes like this one here. But I would say this went a little bit too far. So here, everything is very square and boxed. So that's like almost the opposite. That's why I put them next to each other. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I feel like in general on this page, as I said, they are not bad illustrations, but they lack that charisma that was needed for this character. So going on to the next page, we have some interesting illustrations. It's slightly better than the previous page, but it's still not there yet. It's hard to tell why, but there's a few things I can point out here again. What makes this one, for example, a bit weird are the eyes, in my opinion. They look like really bulging eyes, but just almost about to pop. That's not really describing well the character. For a technician, you want it to feel relaxed and very confident, while this one looks more like scared. So the eyes are obviously very important to get right. While that one is very big and open, this one is tiny, and that's fine for most illustration styles, but in this case it feels a bit like, again, is lacking character. So again, the one on the left, C1 and C2, has issues by going too extreme with the eyes. But then also there's a couple of additional things that I would change, but generally those are things that I would improve. And then the same thing here, interestingly, the eyes, even though it's a cool illustration, like the body is quite good, the eyes make it a bit weird. And also a bit the colors, like the eyebrows are the same color as the shirt, which is not bad, but it's a little bit weird. And also I feel like the beard or the stubble is a little bit off, especially in combination with the eyes. So the eyes are really like a manga illustration, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. But for this particular illustration, because they were not asking for it, it's a bit weird, especially in combination with clothes and the retro style. So moving on to the next page, we have a few illustrations where I feel like they emphasized a bit more the retro style or the retro aspect, like this background is clearly going for that look. Also this illustration, especially with the shading and line work and even the posture, gets a bit more into that retro area, but I think they went a bit too far and we are losing the personality and the caricature aspect. While this one in the middle, I feel like the main problem was it has a good illustrative style, but the proportions are not best suited for this brief. So here we have the proportions more to a comic book than a caricature. So the head is really small. We have a big upper body, long legs. So that suits a superhero really well. It just doesn't really work well with the logo. So even though it's a really good illustration, really good proportions for a comic book, it doesn't really work well as a mascot. So you have to keep that in mind when you are designing a mascot for a company that will be used in combination with the logo. You really need to think about the proportions. So moving on, we get to some better proportioned characters. But here I feel like, again, there's always something missing. Here I feel like the expression is just too strict or too almost angry in a way. This one is more like confused. So again, you don't want to work with a technician. He doesn't really know what he's doing. And even though it's whimsical and fun, I don't think this is what the client wanted. This guy is very confident and happy, but almost like in a Barbie doll way. So again, comes off a bit weird or not suited for the design that we are looking for. He is quite good for the retro look, but again, he's not a caricature. Before we continue, I just wanted to let you know about our creative membership program. For a small monthly fee, you get access to over 200 hours of Adobe certified online training courses. Master all the tools and skills needed to become a professional graphic designer or illustrator. As a pro member, you will get mentoring from me and my team, access to webinars, student forum, and creative briefs to help you build an outstanding portfolio. Pro members can also download the project files for all of our YouTube tutorials. Sign up at yesimadesigner.com/memberships and start your free trial today. And now let's head back to the tutorial. Moving on to the next page, we have very good proportions for a caricature, but again, something is missing. It's sometimes the posture or what they are wearing. Like in this case, I think what he is wearing is the problem. So the client might not like the clothes or the line work. Like here, I feel like these black lines are a little bit too strong. And in this case, I think it was mainly the nose that was a little bit weird. And also the shoulder is almost like missing. So it's hard to tell what's off, especially for the client, but they can tell immediately. They have a gut feeling when they look at something and they can tell, no, this is not what we were looking for. So it's really hard to give you an advice on how to get that right, but really pay attention to what makes the character work. Like the eyes again are too small here. They are much better on these two, but then the feet are also weak on this one. They are much better on the other two. So really hard to say why the client declined these ones or why they were withdrawn, but they didn't end up winning the contest, but they are getting much closer to what the client wanted. And then we arrive to pages like this one, where I think there's some really good illustrations now that we can see. This one is clearly the superhero pose, like even flying, which might be a little bit too far, but that was in the brief, so I can't blame the illustrator for doing that. And this is a difficult pose to do in illustration because you have a very strong perspective going back, and also that means you have foreshortening, so details in the back are getting smaller than details in the front, like the hand gets really big. And I love the way that this character still has that technician element to it, so that we can see the tool in the hand, but we have the cape in the back, we have the goggles, which again is mixing the superhero element with the technician look. I think this is a brilliant example, but again, it wasn't exactly what the client was looking for. And then the other two on the right side are also good, but I'm not going to go into detail on these because I would like to get to the next page where I think there are some of the best entries apart from the winning design. And it is getting harder and harder on these pages to find anything missing or any details that are wrong, because I feel like these are brilliant illustrations. The only thing I could say about the first one is that it tried to stick to the original pose maybe a little bit too much. So it wasn't as original, but it's still a great illustration, and it's a much improved version of the original mascot that they had. So in terms of proportions and the face and everything, I think it's much better, but it might be a little bit too close to the original, and maybe that's why the client didn't like it, because they were used to the old one and they wanted a refresh, and this wasn't far enough from it. Then we have this one here, which I think is really cool. It's really nice character, nice illustration, great lighting and shading. I think there's nothing wrong with this one, so I'm talking about the one in the middle, and the one on the right is also great. Maybe it's the expression that they didn't like, or the pose, or even the colors they used. I'm not 100% sure, but as I said, these are probably my favorite ones out of all the other ones, and apart from the winning design. And now let's get to the winner. So on the right and bottom, you can see the final version, but I also included the first two entries. So this illustrator submitted 3 designs or 3 entries, and I guess the client replied and asked for a few changes. So we can see that there were changes from version 1 to 2, and even from 2 to the final one, there's a couple of changes there on colors and expression. But But generally it didn't change much. So from the first version to the last one, we don't see that much difference. But generally I feel like this illustration does an amazing job combining everything that was described in the brief, maybe apart from the superhero pose. It is still very heroic, so we have the broad shoulders coming down into the waist. We have a good line of action that defines that forward movement, very approachable character, nice expression, great line work, really nicely executed details on the briefcase, and all the colors and details on the clothes are spot on from the brief. Now you can argue whether this is retro enough, and again whether this is superhero-y enough, but there's definitely elements of that as well in the design. And the designer's profile, if you want to have a look at it, is Elza with a dash in the middle, who reached already top level category in 99 Design thanks to the amount of contests won, and also there's almost 100 one-on-one projects finished and 13 repeat clients. Now, apart from the wins, there's also almost the same amount of times that the designer or illustrator was a runner-up, so that's 53. So impressive statistics and even more impressive work here in the portfolio. So I highly recommend to check Elza's portfolio out on 99 Design. We have the link in the description below. And once again, I would like to congratulate Elza Design for winning this very interesting brief and to create this brilliant final artwork. Don't forget to use the comment section below and let me know what you thought about this review. I hope you found it useful. And also you can share your views on any of these entries by using the numbers that I added throughout the review. Thanks a lot for watching. Like and share this video if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever we release new videos. Click on the link on my right and start your membership today to get access to over 200 hours of training courses and personal mentoring by me and my team of creative professionals. Have fun learning, guys, and I will see you in the next one.